Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Liturgy of the Chalice. Today, our talk will be about I will make you fishers of men. It's a very famous statement of Mar Yeshua, the Master Jesus, in that he was walking along the Sea of Galilee and he saw a boat with Peter and his employees, many of whom became Jesus' disciples. And the famous phrase of follow me, help me. Follow me doesn't literally mean follow me down the street. Follow me meant halkani. Halkani means follow my halakha or do my halakha. So literally when he walked up to the boat of Peter or the other apostles or the other would-be apostles, he said, come, do my teaching. Spiritual masters have a very magnetic personality. So some teachers will interpret this as being Jesus as being so powerful and so magnetic, which surely he was, that whenever he said that, they felt something. Whether it was true spiritual ardor, or whether it was, well, let's see what this guy's talking about, because he's kind of strange just walking down the sea and saying, come do my proto-rabbinical teachings, my halakha. But also what we have to understand is that Jesus traveled through cities to proclaim his gospel, his proclamation, his gospel. And a lot of people already knew who he was. In those days, there was no Netflix, there's no theater tradition in Israel and through Judea. So there was not a whole lot to do other than go to the synagogue and connect with others and read the Torah and practice what was said in the Torah, and also with the different Jewish rabbis or masters or prophets taught to you. So outside of going to the temple for temple sacrifices, or if you couldn't make it to the temple because it was far away, that's why there were synagogues, localities, so that people could meet with the chief that was assigned to that synagogue, and they could read the book and make different Seder offerings, such as bread and wine. So Jesus was very well known, and he was very magnetic and very charismatic, and people loved him and flocked to him. That's what we see in the Gospels. So most likely when Jesus was walking by Peter and the other apostles who were fishermen, most likely Jesus saw in them some kind of good spiritual merit, some sort of good spiritual karma, if you will. He saw that they were ripe to be taught. So Jesus, in his role of being well known throughout Galilee, he said, come, do my teaching. And most likely they recognized who he was from his tours around the cities, preaching the gospel in public squares and anywhere he could. And they decided they wanted to learn more about this great prophet, Mar Yeshua, the Master Jesus. Last week, if you attended our service, you may remember this verse. And I wanted to piggyback off of last week, but don't worry if you weren't here, we'll give you the full gist right now. So in the Gospel of Thomas, we see in Logian 8, the Baranash is like a wise fisherman who cast his net into the sea and pulled it up full of small fish. Among them, he found one good large fish. That wise fisherman threw all the small fish back down into the sea without regret, but chose to keep the large fish. Whoever can understand my mashal, my parable, let him apply it to his own life. The teaching of the Master Jesus. So the term baranash, the baranash is like a wise fisherman. Baranash, whenever you see it in English, is called Son of Man. The Son of Man is like a wise fisherman who cast his net into the sea. and pulled it up full of small fish. But among them, he found one good large fish. We understand when we read the totality of the Gospel of Thomas that the Son of Man is not solely Jesus. Jesus is part of the Son of Man, the Son of humanity, the second Adam, but he's not the only Son of Man, the only Messiah. Earlier in the Gospel of Thomas, we see Jesus saying that if you believe in the Davidic Messiah, then the birds of the sky will receive the Malkuth, or the sovereignty of God first. So Jesus is satirizing the Messiah ben David, essentially saying that he does not believe in the Messiah ben David, because the Messiah ben David is supposed to descend from the clouds of the sky and establish his rule on earth, making the new Jerusalem on earth. That was the expectation of the Davidic Messiah. But in the Gospel of Thomas, he said that, well, if you believe in that, then the birds of the sky are going to enter the Malkuth before you do. They're going to enter the kingship, the rulership, the sovereignty of God before you. So he's making fun of the Davidic Messiah. In that same Logian, he said that if you believe in the Messiah ben Joseph, then the fish of the sea will enter into the Malkuth before you. Because the Messiah ben Joseph was the suffering servant. He was one who would be martyred for having taught truth, which sounds a lot like Jesus, but it's apparent that Jesus was kind of satirizing the Messiah ben Joseph, or stating that that teaching wasn't for him or for his students. In Mark, also, we see Jesus satirizing the Messiah ben David, meaning that the Son of Man in this tradition, as we roll back Son of Man to Gospel of Thomas and back to the book of Daniel and the book of Enoch, Son of Man is not singular, it's mankind. So to be a son of humanity was to be an exemplar for humanity. It was to be a tzaddik, a perfected one. So the Bar Anash is a corporate Messiah, an anointed new humanity of regenerated beings who have spiritualized, purified, sanctified themselves through the spiritual teachings of a master. And in this case, when Jesus talks about the Bar Anash, he is saying that the teachings that he has received, that he's giving to the public, are meant to purify ourselves so we can become part of this second Adam, this Bar Anash. Bar Anash is Aramaic. Hebrew Ben Adam means son of Adam. And Adam, again, is not a singular person. Adam is all of humanity. So there is the first humanity, which is immersed in egotism and often in selfishness and fear. But whenever we're spiritually rebirthed by doing Mariette's practices, we become part of the Bar Anash, which is the new humanity, a spiritualized humanity, which Paul called the second Adam, the second humanity. So by doing spiritual practices, we can purify our minds, become tzaddiks. And this corporate Son of Mankind Messiah, the Bar Anash, is the communion of saints. So we become a Bar Anash while living. And when we transition, we become part of this heavenly Bar Anash, or this communion of saints. So this corporate Son of Mankind, Messiah, this second Adam, this heavenly Bar Anash, that is what Jesus is talking about in Logian 8, Gospel of Thomas. So the Bar Anash is the communion of saints, is like a wise fisherman who cast out his net into the sea and pulled it up full of small fish. Among them, he found one good large fish. So when we become a tzaddik, we share in God's Malkuth. Malkuth is the Hebrew Aramaic word, which is often translated as kingdom of God or kingdom of heaven, Malkuth of heaven, Malkuth of God. However, when you look at the root word of Malkuth, you see that it's not talking about a place. It's not talking about a kingdom or a king domain. It's talking about kingship, rulership, sovereignty. So whenever we purify ourselves and we become part of this communion of saints, this anointed new humanity, this corporate Messiah of great illumined beings, we are given a portion of God's sovereignty to help with the evolution of humanity and to help with the evolution of the earth. That's what the corporate Baranosh is about. It was taught in Babylon, in the Babylonian exile, where the Jews went after the destruction of the first temple, Solomon's temple. They merged and had a lot of ideas and syncretization of other traditions, and they came up with this idea of a corporate Baranosh. And that sometimes is very confusing to people that are new to our church, because modern Christianity only teaches about a son of David and that Jesus was that Davidic Messiah. However, there are many messianic expectations in Jewish culture, not just the Davidic Messiah. Not everybody believed in the Davidic Messiah. There's a lot of difference between the Judean idea of a Messiah ben David and the Babylonian concept of the corporate Baranosh, second Adam. In Judea, they were very much oppressed by the Roman Empire. So the Jews that were living in the area of Judea and Galilee were very much expecting that God would send somebody to save them from the Roman Empire. They wanted a Jewish conqueror, somebody from the line of David, the great famed King David, to come and crush the opposition and establish Israel as the one nation of the whole world, or the known world at the time. Although the Jews that were exiled to Babylon, of course, what happened was terrible to them, and we're not trying to minimize that at all. But, I mean, the conquering kingdom came in and they destroyed Solomon's temple. They moved everybody to Babylon. The Babylonian king moved everybody to Babylon as to live in exile. Why did the Babylonian king do that? Because the Jews are very intelligent, educated people that could lift up society, add to society. So a lot of conquerors would conquer fertile land or areas where education was flourishing so that they could then consume that prosperity, that intellectual prowess. So some Jews were slaves and some were also left to live normal lives. And for the most part, as the Babylonian exile moved on, they were treated much better and had a lot of freedom, the Jewish diaspora in Babylon, than were the Romans, the Roman afflicted Judean culture to the north. So the Babylonian expectation of Messiah, it wasn't for somebody to come and conquer, because their lives in the Jewish diaspora in Babylon was relatively good. So they weren't expecting a conqueror to come and slay all the evildoers and establish a new Jerusalem. They were expecting something more universal, that I see I'm stuck in this world, that I'm attached to things other than God, but if I purify myself, I can become a part of this anointed messianic communion of saints. And that's what Jesus taught. And this all is taught in the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel was written in Aramaic, Jesus's mother tongue. And so when you read that in the book of Enoch, it also talks about the corporate Baranosh. Those were Jesus's sources for the corporate Baranosh new humanity that we find in the Gospel of Thomas, and that we also infer through the rest of the Gospels. So again, the corporate Baranosh, the communion of saints, once they inherit part of God's sovereignty, they are in charge of helping with the evolution of humanity. So the Baranas is like a wise fisherman that casted net into the sea and pulled up a lot of small fish. Humanity is in a sea of consciousness. Physics tells us that everything is vibrating around us, that everything is energetic, and that there's a lot more space around us than we think or we currently perceive. So the sea is the sea of consciousness, the sea of creation in which humanity lives. And the Baranas sift through humanity. They put a net into humanity and they pull it upward through spiritual evolution. And in the net, when they look, they see there's a lot of small fish, which is most souls that are not aspiring for God or for any particular spiritual goal. But among all these small fish, the Baranas found one good large fish, and that is a Sadiq, a saint that has transitioned from the physical body to a spiritual body in the beyond, whatever that is for each of us. That wise fisherman threw all the small fish back down into the sea without regret, but chose to keep the large fish. So, in other words, those souls that are not yet fully spiritually liberated from debt to God, debt to humanity, debt to nature, they're not yet ripe, then they have to be sent back into the sea of creation to be reincarnated. And that soul must pick up wherever he or she left off and continue their spiritual evolution. This is very much a Jewish idiom that we see here. A lot of spiritual ideas in Judaic culture are about digestion, about immersing oneself into another. So the Baranash, why would a fisherman fish for fish, right? You want to eat the fish. You're going to digest the fish. You're going to assimilate the fish, and it's going to become part of you, right? But we're talking about a spiritual parable. And Marietta says, whoever understands this parable, let him apply it to his own life. So the Baranash, we talk about a heavenly messianic marriage banquet. And the messianic marriage banquet is whenever a soul merges itself into the Baranash, into the second humanity, this heavenly communion of saints. We marry it, we merge into it, we become one with it. So the Baranash is the one body and one blood of Christ. So remember, Messiah means Christ. Christ means Messiah. It means anointed. So the Christ, the one body, the one blood of Christ, is the Christed second Adam, the anointed second Adam, the communion of all regenerated, spiritually rebirthed beings. So whenever the Baranas is conscious that a great saint has become liberated, then they digest that saint, they consume that saint, so to speak. They eat that large fish, and that large fish becomes one, a single one, with the corporate Baranash, or regenerated second humanity. So the fact that we have this concept here of the Baranash being a fisherman that catches fish to eat, consume the fish, that's an idea of bringing together two things. The large fish, who is the Sadiq or perfected one, and the Baranas, or the corporate humanity. The corporate humanity consumes or brings that large fish into itself forever. So this being taught, why does Jesus say, those who understand my parable, let him apply it to his own life? Isn't this something beyond us? When Mar Yeshua says to apply it to your own life, he means do my teachings. What I'm asking you to do, I ask you to do it for the purification of your heart, for the expansion of your consciousness, And when you purify your heart and consciousness, you become eligible that the Baranat will throw out a net again. And the next time around, you're going to be the big fish if you do my teaching. You'll be the illumined being that becomes united with, digested by the Son of Mankind, corporate Messiah, the Baranash, the second Adam. So in Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 17, we see the famous verse. As Jesus passed along the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon, which is Peter, and his brother Andrew casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." With the understanding we have gotten from the Gospel of Thomas, Logan 8, we need to apply it here. And remember, when Jesus said, "Follow me," he wasn't meaning follow me down the street. What it literally was in Aramaic was halakha. It means follow or do my halakha. And by doing Jesus' halakha, you purify your heart. You expand your consciousness. And ultimately, if you're successful, you become part of the communion of saints. And when you're part of the communion of saints, you are therefore able to help with the spiritual evolution of humanity. And there, they can do the work as described with the corporate Messiah and Thomas. They can then work with humanity and sift through humanity, finding that one large fish, that tzaddik, that perfected one, that illumined one, to bring into the fold of the communion of saints. And those souls that are not yet fully liberated, they gently and lovingly send them back into creation to be reincarnated, where they can then continue their spiritual progress from there unto perfection. So when you understand the Aramaic, all it's doing is reiterating in lesser words the Gospel of Thomas. Follow me again means do my halakha, halakha. By doing Jesus' halakha, if you really do it, then you become a saint. You become part of the communion of saints, the Baranash. And then you are able to fish for people. You're fishing for saints to bring into, invite into, initiate into spiritual regeneration within the corporate Baranash. In Matthew chapter 13, verses 47 through 48, we see the kingdom, Malkuth, of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught fish of every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down, and put the good into baskets, but threw out the bad. So here, there's a little bit of redaction from the more historically accurate Gospel of Thomas, but it's essentially the same things. What I don't like about Matthew is that he assigns certain fish to be good and certain fish to be bad. But that's what it is. Because ultimately, when you read the Bible, the next thing is about hellfire and all that kind of stuff to try to scare the shit out of people, which is totally non-historical. So they're using this historical teaching to warn people about the false teaching of an eternal hell. In this tradition, there is no eternal hell. In every tradition, honestly, there's no eternal hell. But enough on that, that's for a different day. But anyhow, again, the Malkuth, the better word for Malkuth, kingdom is a poor translation of the word Malkuth. It means the rulership of heaven, the sovereignty of heaven. So the kingship of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught fish of every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down, and put the good into baskets, but threw out the bad. So the rulership of heaven is, of course, the Abba, the Father, Mother, God is at the top, ruling all. But also part of the sovereignty of God is the that which is like a human being that sits at the right hand of God in the book of Daniel. And that thing which is like a human is the Baranash corporate Messiah. So that Baranash corporate Messiah has been given sovereignty, dominion over all people. So they cast the net to the sea of creation and they catch fish, humans of every kind. And then it depicts the apostles as being part of this corporate Baranash. And they sat down and they put good fish in the good baskets and bad fish in the bad baskets. So the good fish would then become part of the communion of saints, or the sovereignty, the Malkuth of heaven. The bad fish were thrown out. And in Matthew, the ahistorical part, the non-historical part is that those bad fish, they very well might go to the fiery pits of hell, which is not what Jesus taught. That was a Orphic Greek conflation of Jesus's idea of Gehenna, which was a place of purification and reflection, so that in the next lifetime we can continue and spiritually evolve. So in the Gospel of Thomas, we don't see this good and bad distinction, right and wrong. Really what it is when we become spiritually purified, it's like the light comes on. It's like turning on a light switch. But until we're able to spiritually turn on that light switch, we just aren't illuminated. So when the heavenly Baranash, the communion of saints, sends us back into the sea of creation to be reincarnated and continue on our spiritual path, it does not mean that we're bad. It means that we're simply not ripe yet. We have more work to do. But it's not a distinction of good, bad, good, evil, da-da-da-da-da. It's just that the Baranash, the communion of saints, those who are perfected and sharing God's Malkuth, they simply see that you're a great person. You're a wonderful soul. You've come so far, but you still have a little bit more to go. So keep on striving, keep on seeking, keep on knocking until you achieve full illumination. And then you can become part of the communion of saints with us. But until you're ready, you're not ready. So we have to keep on striving and keep on doing Mar Yeshua's halakha, his teaching, and so that we make ourselves eligible to be selected by the communion of saints to become part of the one body and the one blood of the one Christ, the corporate Messiah. In the Gospel of Thomas, Logian 23, I conclude with this verse. The Baranash shall select you, 1 out of 1,000, and 2 out of 10,000, and you shall stand immortal as a single being. This is an amazing teaching from the historical master Jesus found in the Gospel of Thomas. The Baranash, the corporate new humanity, second Adam, regenerated humanity, shall select you, 1 out of 1,000, and 2 out of 10,000, and you shall stand immortal as a single being. So what is this single being? The single being is the Baranash, the corporate Messiah. When your I becomes we, then you're well on the way to illumination, if not illumined. When you're not just thinking about yourself, but you are thinking about the one humanity. The single being is the one spiritualized humanity, the communion of saints. So it's saying that the communion of saints itself selects you, a human being, to become part of the single being of the Christ, the Baranash, the new humanity, the second Adam, the communion of saints. And you shall stand immortal at one-ment with the communion of saints. So becoming a single being means that you are no longer just your egoic identity. You are now a spiritualized soul an illumined soul, a perfected soul that literally becomes part of the whole Baranash, Son of Mankind, corporate Christ, corporate Messiah. You are no longer just living for I, but you're eternally living for we, for the evolution of humanity, the evolution of the earth, to serve God joyfully, immortally, eternally. Now let's sort out this middle portion. 1 out of 1,000 will be selected. 2 out of 10,000 will be selected. Are the saints partial? Do they say, oh, you're good, you're bad? No. However, we did discuss that they do look for the facts that you are spiritually right, that you are perfected, that you're illumined, before they invite you into the inner fold of the communion of saints, the corporate Christ, corporate Messiah. So what it means, 1 out of 1,000, 2 out of 10,000, is that only 1 or 2 out of thousands is really truly walking the spiritual path. Only 1 or 2 out of tens of thousands of people really are sincerely doing the teachings of Jesus. And so only 1 or 2 out of thousands in each generation will become part of the communion of saints, the Baranash. So it's not that the Baranash doesn't want us to be part of the communion of saints. It's that we're not yet ready yet. So we will know when we're illumined and when we're perfected. You'll know. And until that time comes, we have to keep on sincerely striving to love God more, to love God with all of our heart, all of our strength, all of our energy, and to love our neighbors, that is, all of humanity, as ourselves. That, in addition to doing the Halakha of Mar Yeshua, that is what qualifies us to stand immortal as a single being, as part of the whole communion of saints. But until we're serious enough to really do the Halakha, to serve the vulnerable, to meditate, to pray, to reflect on the teachings daily, until it becomes our life breath, then we're not ripe yet. May we all become ripe and seek spiritual perfection. May we all become spiritually regenerated. May we all stand immortal as a single being.